Hey guys, in today's episode, I've got Travis Johnson with me from the Minnesota Nice Home Buyers, obviously up in Minnesota. And he's going to share with us their strategies that they're doing to crush the game in Minnesota. You'll see in the description there, we're going to talk about something that's not quite wholesaling, it's not quite rehabbing, it's definitely not selling as an agent. The term is wholetailing. Travis, how you doing today, buddy?
Not too bad. Thanks, Rick.
Good, man. Thank you for taking the time and coming to share some of your wisdom with the
Yep.
audience. There's a lot of new and very experienced real estate investors that follow us. And to
hmm
be honest, the topics that we're going to talk about today, I don't have much experience in, and I'm proud to
Sure.
say that, and I'm excited to learn from you. So before we get going, Travis, tell us a little bit about yourself. Travis, you're in Minnesota.
Yep, that's correct. I've been doing full-time flipping in 2016, kind of got rid of the job in 2015. To be honest, I got tired of office politics, and then eventually said, hey, there's got to be something better. So I decided to take the plunge. I always had interest in real estate. I kind of flipped on the, weekends, that type of stuff. But
Congratulations,
then
man.
appreciate it. And so I decided, hey, let's make the plunge. So eventually, fast forward, obviously now it's already 2025, but I started Minnesota Nice Home Buyers, the brand, in I believe it was 2021. Um, Full disclosure, when I first got started, I bought a couple We Buy Ugly House franchise.
Okay.
Not at the same time. Bought one a couple of years later, bought another one, but eventually it wasn't working for me. Probably works for others. There's plenty of other franchises, but it wasn't working for me.
Right.
So I talked to the wife and we're just being honest with each other. It's like, hey, either we're gonna go off on our own and see if we can make it work, or we got to go back and get jobs. Obviously,
Okay.
there was no delay with my wife. She immediately says, "We're going to figure this out." So
There you go.
we decided to go with Minnesota Nice Home Buyers because their state is already branded. People kind of know it mostly for, hey, people are Minnesota nice. Hey, they're
Yeah.
kind, that type of thing. So I was thinking, hey, since the name's available, domain name, business name, I said, why not do that? It's already kind of pre-branded for us. We just have to tie the word Hope Buyer behind it. And at the
Right.
same time, we're nice, obviously, people. So we just went with it. So we created the brand. We did struggle in our first year trying to find our identity. I'm not saying it was just super easy. We were basically every month was a push. You were making money, but just enough to pay the bills and next month. And then we were just trial and error trying to figure out all the marketing, probably what a lot of people do when they get started.
Right.
And eventually we found the right combination of marketing. It started coming together. And then once it did, we put it on steroids and then it exploded in a positive way for us. And our business blew up. And now we're averaging, I would say a good rule of thumb, our average is about 75 houses a year.
Nice. So let's unpack some of that for somebody brand new starting. You started in 2016. What led you? Like what's flipped the switch? Like why real estate? Where did that
Yeah,
transition?
no, I always had a lot of interest in real estate. Just flipping, just because I always kept thinking, man, you can make chunks of money, like $10,000, $15,000, and when you have a regular job, especially late '90s, early 2000s, it's like, hey, that would almost take 3 to 5 months just to earn
Right.
that type of pay. And I'm thinking, man, you could just do this and like potentially one deal. I was like, why don't I do that? Because then I could do more of those with less time ultimately. But I will
Right.
admit, I was kind of chicken shit, like everyone. Like, I don't know, do I leave up the comfort of a job? That was always the hard thing, right?
Yeah.
You're used to steady paycheck. But eventually, I was. I think the universe kind of guides you in a path. Sometimes, if it's not the way you think that it should go, but it's trying to tell you, hey, you're not listening, so I'm going to make your life miserable. So you will
Right.
make the decision you need to make. That's what I feel like kind of happened. So I made the plunge over the real estate. I've just always fascinated by all assets of the I was a real well, I still have my realtor license, but the real estate license, I was like, I don't want to be a realtor. I tried that a little bit, didn't excite me. I was like, the fix and flip, that was a lot of fun, but I was like, man, I have to learn all these trades. I got to wear all these
Right.
hats and I have to figure it out. I was like, I don't know if I can scale that way. And then it's like, well, now I got to figure out marketing. And that's where I think a lot of people fail is the marketing.
Right.
When you get
Yep.
into the flipping business, you're in the marketing business. That's really
Right.
what you're in. It just comes to
100%.
the house when it comes in. And wrapping your head around that at the beginning didn't happen. I will admit I had to stumble in to figure out like, oh, okay, I really got to be good at marketing. And that's when I kind of got started. I was like, hey, if I buy We Buy Glass franchise, they do the marketing for you. So I was like, this is going to be a sweet deal. They do that. I work on the house. Again, it worked for a few years, and then it wasn't working any longer for me. So I'm not trying to put down
Right.
anyone that owns the franchise still. More power to you. You were able to make it work. I was just fortunate enough to make my own brand, own it, and then the best thing is obviously no one controls us because in a franchise system you have to follow the rules.
Right.
Naturally for us, we just our only rules are the laws. that are out there. You just got to follow the laws. So
Right. So you're full time. You and on average, you guys are doing somewhere around 75 deals a year.
that's correct. Yep. And
That's
that's going to be
awesome.
a, yeah. And that's a combination, so I'm not saying that's 75 rehab. It's going to
Right.
fall in one of these three buckets for us, at least. It's going to be what we call assignments. Those are truly
Yeah.
just pushing paper.
Yep.
Um, and you can also put wholesaling in there because sometimes you have to do a double close, right? The
Yep.
traditional sense. So that's bucket number one. The second one is wholetailing, obviously something that I'll share with your guys is
Right.
today. And then the last bucket is the traditional fix and flip. So
Okay.
I currently don't own any rentals. I'm getting closer there. I kind of need to go that direction for tax savings, to be honest. I need depreciation. I need more write-offs because Uncle Sam is nipping at my toes, and I'm kind of getting tired of paying in the sizable checks into the
Yeah.
government. So
Yep.
rentals will be another bucket, but those are our three categories out of the 75. It's almost a third, third, and a third. It's not intentionally like, hey, I have to push it into this bucket. But when you look at it on a yearly basis, that it's almost equal a third all the way down. That
Okay.
our exit strategy fell
That's
into one
very
of those
that's very
buckets.
that's very powerful. So when you first got started, other than what would you say to someone that's just getting started, not the franchise model, but
Yep.
the first marketing strategies, like how were you marketing at first outside of the franchise? Like what would you tell someone that doesn't have much of a marketing budget, they're just trying to figure this game out? Like what would you
Yep.
say to someone looking to market?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I would say networking is basic, but some people are introverts, right? Unfortunately, and it's like, well, you gotta be open to talking to people.
Right.
But if you get out and network with just agents, but you want to get with agents that are players, and players are either they identify they work with investors or they just do volume. They're just a big player in the market. You got to get connected with them and say, hey, I'm looking for deals. And then once they know that you're looking for deals and that you're serious and you have your stuff lined up, when I say stuff lined up, your financing, your hard money lender, how you're going to close on the deal, that type of stuff.
Right.
That would be avenue number one. And then the others is driving for dollars, as simple as the concept is. Literally driving around. I still use the app itself, the deal machine app, where
Yeah.
you just go around and I think it's still called pinning, to be honest. I'm just used to hitting the button, but you just pin it on your phone and then you know the address and then you're going to mark it. You can cold call if you're comfortable with doing that. You could send a postcard and say, hey, I'm interested in buying your property. But those are very low cost strategies. And then
Yeah.
the last one, if you're okay with kind of getting low margins, and I'm talking, you're probably making 15 to 25 on a flip. I'm not saying that's exciting money because you did take on some risk, but sometimes you just have to break that glass, right? You got to punch
Right.
on through. First couple deals, you maybe have to make kind of little money on it just to get the experience and traction going. But all the Facebook groups, in your market, I mean, in Minnesota, I bet you there's probably at least 14 Facebook groups that are dedicated to off market retail, off market non retail properties. People say,
Right.
"Hey, I got a fix and flip, or I got a contract. Who's interested?" People lay those out. Normally, those are thinner margins. I mean, they're going to describe that they have fat margins, but just by years of doing it, they're wrong on the ARV and they're wrong on the repairs. So it's really thinner. But if you're looking like, I don't got much of a marketing budget, but I want to get started, those are
Right.
the three that I would actually point someone towards because obviously you can keep your costs well under $500 for
Yeah.
any three of those marketing strategies.
I'll tell you what, that's powerful. We teach people. We're still fans of driving for dollars too. We just had
Yep.
a meetup the other night where this was one of our main topics. When people get
Sure.
started, driving for dollars can make you a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
And your only expenditure is the cost of the app. And if anybody's interested in to learn more about Deal Machine, drop a comment below. I'll send you a free link, or not a free
Mhm.
link, an affiliate link where you'll get a
Yep.
discount on all sorts of stuff. Um, but driving for dollars is just something you can do while you're out living your everyday life.
Yep.
And if you want to be intentional with it, it's just simply picking an area of maybe a square mile, 2 square miles, and driving through neighborhoods looking for houses that could use some
Yep.
attention, right?
Yep.
If driving for dollars interests you and you'd like to hear the ins and outs of how we do that, drop a comment below. Shoot Travis a DM, and I'd be happy. I'm sure he'd be happy just to give you the highlights because driving for dollars is a very free, other than time and gas, the resources are very minimal. And when you
Yes.
first get started investing in real estate, guys, you have to remember there's going to be an expense. At first, the expense is going to be time, sweat equity, right?
Yep.
Then it evolves into the expense is money, paying for marketing strategies. Those
Yep.
are when you're attracting deals to you. So I think that's
Yep.
really awesome that you still do the fundamentals, Travis, of
Oh
the
yeah.
how to begin a real estate investor.
Yeah. And I would also tell people with the driving for dollars to also, if they do the deal machine direction, there's other competitors that probably are similar, but they're kind of the bigger known name out there, and
Yeah.
they kind of got their stuff together. So that's why I refer them. But I would say, because it's all done by GPS. So the old fashioned way was you should pull up, get out the legal notepad, and you're writing down the address, and you're like, what street am I on now? I got the
Yeah.
house number, but what street am I on? And then you got to try and write that down, and then you got to do it, and then you got to go home and look it up. Deal Machine is going to do that all on your behalf, and it's pinning. You hit a button, and it stores all that stuff. It's already going to
Yep.
pull the owner of the house. So people that are thinking about doing it, is like it's really hands off on the
Yeah.
research side. And I would say that the perfect avatar for driving for dollars, other than anyone can do it, but single moms or dads that have young kids and they want to get some extra income, but they know they can't leave the kids at home, but maybe they're young enough where they fall asleep in the car. You can throw them in the car and start driving neighborhoods, and you can kind of make money while you're watching your kid and trying to break
Yep.
into this business or supplement your income.
Yep. That's awesome, man. So what's your deal flow look like? You're getting 75 deals a year. We've talked, we know what rehabbing is. Rehabbing is fix and flipping. We've talked about wholesaling on this podcast numerous times. People understand what wholesaling is. Let's talk like what is this wholetailing? What is it? What is the term
Sure,
wholetailing? How did you get to this? Let's talk about what your business looks like as far as a wholetailing aspect.
sure. And my definition of wholesaling could always be different from someone else's. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying they're wrong and I'm right and they're wrong. It's my opinion. My opinion is a hotel property is a property that needs work in some fashion. It could need paint, it could need carpet, it's just strictly outdated, but it needs minimal work. But the number one key thing to make a hotel deal work, it has to get bank financing. That's where the strategy pays off. So if you come across a property and when the buyer that buys the property from you goes to a traditional bank or mortgage lender and they send out an appraiser, will the appraiser write up safety issues about the property? If if that's the case, that's not a hotel property.
Right.
The ones that normally fall in this category are what we call grandma houses. They're dated. It's a 1970s house, 1960s house, and it looks original. Something that most people would say, I don't want to live in this wallpaper house with the pink bathtub and the toilet that matches. I get it. But the thing is someone will buy that house and have their dream, their HGTV effect, if you will.
Right.
They will see the vision with it. If they can get bank financing, that's what qualifies for a hotel deal, other than the second thing, which isn't as major as the first one, was the bank financing. The second major thing is it's got to be able to be minimal on repairs. And
Okay.
minimal on repairs, I'd like to say for me, in my market, the average price of a house is probably about $350,000 median price in our
Okay.
market. Obviously, worse off neighborhoods, way lower end, right? And then better, way higher. So, most people's markets, if you're in the Midwest, you might be at the 150, the 200, maybe 225 would
Right.
be kind of the sweet spot for that type of house. And you just got to go ahead and make sure the repairs on something, let's say it's a 225 house, around 15,000, 20 tops on repairs. So that normally means for me, because all my work gets subbed out, I'm subbing out a painter. My market, unfortunately, I'm going to pay $5,000 to $8,000 to get a house painted on the interior. Wish
Okay.
I could get it done way cheaper with good quality, but through trial and error, I found out, we got a guy that finally it just works. So you make the math work that way. And
Right.
then a flooring company, and it doesn't matter if we do the LVL planking or if we're going to do the carpet. The price is almost the same per square foot, so it's really easy for us to take the whole square footage of a house and say, hey, this is going to run us about 7,500 for flooring for the whole house. And it doesn't matter
Okay.
what gets installed; it's going to be universal. For us, normally it means paint and flooring is the most I'm doing to a house, other than hey, this faucet drips, replace the faucet. Need a couple GFIs in the kitchen to pass. Go ahead and add a couple GFIs. You're not putting on doing those two things and say I'm going to add a roof. I'm going to replace some windows. Now you're officially rehabbing it. Maybe it's a
Right.
light rehab, but now you cross that barrier.
Right.
The whole thing is you want to be able to be in and out of these properties. 3 weeks is the max, but you should be shooting for 2 weeks. And that
Okay.
means if you're in it for 2 weeks, it's got to be very minimal stuff. And sometimes a hotel on a property, it just needs a roof. Call it the roofer. The roofer puts on a new roof within the first 2 weeks of you owning it, and then you put it on the market. It can be dated, but psychologically, a lot of newbies and maybe even some seasoned people, if they're not doing this wholesale strategy, they'll say, "There's no way this house will sell. It's dated. No one's going to buy it." Well, again, you're not asking the rehab number of what a property looks like, all rehabbed up, done up nice and sexy. You're not asking that number. You're way below it. But guess what? More people can afford that cheaper house.
Right.
If they can afford it, more buyers. And then if blessed is still in this market sometimes, you're going to get multiple offers in that
Yep.
scenario. So you'll be able to jump on it, and that'll even push up your profit margin because a lot of people are like, I can only afford up to, let's say, 225. But if you rehab the house yourself, Rick, now it's a 275 house.
Right.
Now you lost all those buyers, but they can
Yep.
afford 225 and slowly put money into the house as they live in it. Because a lot
Yep.
of people that buy these hotels are not flippers, right? They're people that are actually going to live in the house.
Yep.
It's all about the payment. Can I afford the payment?
Yep.
Then they get in. But if the investor gets in their head like, oh, no one wants this dated kitchen, that's the wallpaper, the pink bathtub, it's fair to have that mindset. But I got well past that once the checks start coming in, and these checks are almost as big as a traditional fix and flip, and that's
Nice.
what caught my attention. Is like, hey, if I can make anywhere from $40,000 to $60,000 on a hotel deal, why am I fixing and flipping? I can speed up my cash conversion cycle and all that stuff. And then
Right.
once you do it a couple times, then your confidence starts going through the roof. It's not a fluke. It's just breaking down that barrier that maybe some investors have in their head that no, it can't be done. And I'm telling you, it can be done. And because think of it this way, a bank, especially if banks are getting properties back, I know we're still not there. The foreclosures aren't in volume with the banks, but
Right.
just think of the mindset when a bank gets it back. Does a bank ever fix up a house?
Nope.
They never do.
Nope.
Sometimes they just get the house back and they just naturally put it on the market, but it's dated and it sells right away. They're inadvertently wholetailing themselves.
Yep.
Well, that'll be used as a comp, right? A comparable for an appraiser and say this is what a dated house sells for, but it's functional and you can get financing on it. So people just got to look back what sold at dirt cheap prices and what conditions were those properties. And that's your comparable to use it against.
So you're essentially still using all the inbound marketing strategies that you would normally use,
Yep.
whether you're looking for a flip, a wholesale, whatever.
Yep.
And you're just putting an extra exit strategy on your in your tool belt of wholetailing, which is faster than rehabbing,
Yep.
less work than rehabbing,
Yep.
little more intricate than wholesaling because you're actually taking the property down
Taking it down.
and might maybe doing some minor work to it,
Yep.
right? But it's getting back on the market so much faster, which is shortening your cash conversion cycle. So explain to the people what that means. When you say cash conversion cycle, what do you mean by that?
Sure. Oh, if I only knew this rule, Rick, when I first started and really understood it. I heard the language before. People cash conversion cycle. That's some masterminds people say it, but they never go in detail. And I think it just had to finally hit me one day where it was just perfect moment in my life and my business that boom, it hit me like a brick. Cash conversion cycle. I was like, well, how can I find out what my cash conversion cycle is? So I went in and took all the data of all the properties we bought and I put them all in order, how long we owned them for, what was the exit strategy, and then what the profit was. And
Okay.
I was way over the board. Every house that I made nothing or lost some money on, unfortunately, I'm not going to brag. I went on every deal. It's
Yeah.
almost not possible when you start buying in bulk,
Right.
just because it's a numbers game. But we lose on very few, but we do lose on some. But on the ones that we made very little or we lost money, our cash conversion cycle window was through the roof. That means our hold time was super long. We're talking 6 months plus
Okay.
on these deals. So then I realized I was like, well, all right, what else is, you're looking for patterns in your data. And then you start looking at ages of the houses. Like, I went past the 6 month mark, but I also realized the house was built before 1940. There's another thing that's a red flag on my end that says, hey,
Right.
don't buy those houses. When I say buy, like I'm going to fix and flip the house. No, you can buy it and assign it or wholesale it to another investor. There's still plenty that want to do it. I would encourage you, if you're going to fix and flip or wholesale, don't buy anything before that time period because the wiring's older. There's just more flaws with the house and
Right.
your budget always gets blown. I mean, I'm pretty sure you've had that
Oh
experience,
yeah.
unfortunately, where When it's older, it never stops asking for money. So it kills
Yeah.
your budget. So once I saw the pattern, I was like, all right, 6 months and longer, I get killed. And then I started looking, I was like, hey, these wholesale ones, I'm making as much as these fix and flips a lot of the time. I was like, well, I should concentrate a little bit more on that. And then I'm like, but I can't give up on all fix and flip because not everything qualifies for a wholesale.
Right.
So eventually, for me, and if you guys start looking at your own data, I would give you at least my parameters and say, if you don't have data yet, maybe consider using my data that I have and then tweak it as soon as your data starts becoming available. But I realized if I owned a house, when I say own, that's from the time I closed on it to the time it's ready to go on the market, MLS when I say on the market.
Right.
If I'm 55 days or less, I was very profitable on that house. Traditionally, 55 days or less was the max. That means a full fix and flip would be 55 days or less. If it exceeded my projection, and sometimes it was the house shouldn't take that long. I just don't have enough guys to work on it. I have too
Right.
much inventory and I'm going to exceed this date. And then my data always tells me when I go past this date, I start losing money. And when I say lose, in some cases, it could be actually just less profit, not a true loss. So I've learned, all right, I gotta I gotta sell that off to another investor because I know I can't get to it and accomplish everything under 55 days. So once I adopted that rule of 55 days or less, and that was November of 2023, is when I finally put this into place. My my very next year was the most profitable year I ever had, by far, not even close. And I contributed huge to the cash conversion cycle of finding the data of saying 55 days or less was the trigger for it. And now to break it down a little more granular, if you don't mind, on the cash conversion cycle, I'd like to use the data in the sense of let's just pretend a house was $100,000 house, just as an entry. Like, hey, you buy it, it would be at 100,000. It might sell for 175. Um, let's just let's assume that $100,000 house, I could either wholesale it or assign it to an investor for 25,000 in that
Okay.
example for profit. That means super fast chance that I'm going to get money today in my pocket. The day you kind of close, double close, and then if I decided I'm going to do the true fix and flip, and I would make 45,000. So
Okay.
someone getting started, they're like, I want the 45. Why would I
Yeah.
take 25 when I have 45? Please, I'm going to try and be polite about it, but that's penny wise, pound foolish thinking. And
Right.
only hard knocks have taught me that. Not because I'm just naturally smart. I wish I was, but I had to learn the hard way. The $25,000 today will go a lot faster. As the example would be, in that scenario, most investors would probably take 5 to 6 months on a traditional fix and flip. They think that they'll be done with a house in 2 months. It's probably three. If you don't have contractors lined up and you were going to do a bunch of the work yourself, but you haven't really done a lot of flips, it's always going to take you more time. And
Yeah.
that's only just because you're newer. It's not because you're a bad person. Just unfortunately, we all take a lot of time when you're getting started.
Right.
So if you're maybe 2 to 3 months minimum before you're ready to get it on the market, well, especially in the market we're in now, it could take another 2 to 3 months if you're aggressively marketing at an aggressive price. Not saying overpriced, but aggressive, like near the top. You could be in that house for 6 months. So,
Okay.
all right, at the end of that 6 months, you would make 45,000 versus the 25 that you could have had in your first month. Where the thinking should go is that if you could get that money in the first month of 25,000, let's just assume you got that money back month one, 25,000, and you're going to reinvest that back into marketing to get another deal. Now, to be fair, let's just assume you get the money back, you had to deploy the marketing, it took another 30 days to wrap up another deal. So it'll be like every other month for up to 6 months. That means you would get three deals at $25,000 average profit in this example. That means at the end of 6 months, you would have $75,000 worth of burnable income versus the $45,000 on the fix and flip on that
Right.
cash conversion cycle. But if you're smart with the money and you're not going to do something stupid with it and blow it and buy a bunch of toys and all that stuff, you would start compounding that money faster. So that means you would have some spare money that you already know, like, hey, I got to get out marketing because I want another deal ready to go. I don't want to get the money and then start the marketing again. You eventually can redeploy it. So let's assume the first 6 months, the most you get was 75,000 with the first strategy of
Right.
assigning it or wholesaling it right away versus the 45. But in the months 6 through 12, if you kept with the marketing, you're probably almost going to average now a deal a month. So let's just still pretend you only can make 25,000 on the front end, if you assign it or wholesale it to someone else, and it's still, let's just also make the assumption we're going to make only 45,000 if we did a true fix and flip. So that means in 1 year fix and flip, you're only doing two deals. That
Okay.
$45,000 profit in this example, that means you would make $90,000 total in that year. That's not a bad income if you have low marketing costs, low overhead. That's a
Right.
livable for some. That I'm not saying that's bad, but what you gave up on that final 6 months, if you were getting $25,000 a month for the next 6 months of the year, that's going to get you a grand total of $150,000 worth of assignment income or wholesale income, whatever you want to label it at, if you sold it right away versus going the long distance where you would made 90,000. So
Right.
150 versus 90. Less risk, got rid of it right away. More risk because your budget isn't always guaranteed. What you see on the surface, you start peeling back in that tile, and it's like, oh, there's mold in the wall. Now I got to rip this out. Or there's lead-based pipes that I didn't realize was there. They converted copper downstairs, and then they hit it behind the wall. Stuff like
Yeah.
that. So if you take on the mindset of that the cash conversion cycle, the faster you can get the money back and redeploy it into marketing, you will grow the money way faster than the traditional fix and flip to long term. I'm not saying fix and flip is bad. I still do that, but I'm just
Right.
saying think about the cash conversion cycle. $25,000 today is always worth more than 45,000 5 6 months down the road, hands down.
Yeah, that makes a lot of
You know,
sense. I think a lot of the takeaways from what you just said is know your numbers and understand how to run your key KPIs, your key
yep,
performance indicators,
yep,
and understanding, it's so valuable what you're talking about because number one, you're right. Back at in the middle of this, you said that we are in the sales and marketing business, right? That's
mhm,
that's that's the real estate. Our job as real estate investors is always to fill the top of the funnel.
yep,
What happens at the bottom of the funnel never happens
yep,
unless we fill the top of the funnel,
right,
right?
yep,
And the fact that you've given yourself multiple exit strategies, I think that's powerful. We do the same thing.
yep,
We look at ourselves as just lead generators, and we
hmm,
figure out what the exit strategy is when the lead comes across the plate, right?
yep,
And I think that boils down to the education that you have, and I think that's awesome, man. But you're right. I didn't know anything about the quote unquote cash conversion cycle for years, and
yeah,
we was when we got started, it was rehabbers. I didn't even know anything about
yeah,
wholesaling for the first six
yeah,
years. And but then when somebody educates you on how the speed in which you can make the money and then reinvest, that's a game changer. But I think it's all about growth, So if anybody
yep,
listening to this, if you're listening to this saying, "Wow, all these terms and all this stuff," don't let it discourage you. Don't let it hold you back. It's just experience. And when you start doing this business, regardless of what exit strategy you are, you become a full-fledged real estate investor.
yep,
That's not a wholesaler. It's not a rehabber. It's not a landlord. It's a real estate investor. So you know how to take a lead, you know how to generate a lead, number one,
hmm,
and turn it into capital on the back end. How do you do that?
yep,
That's a full-fledged real estate investor. So I think that's
yeah,
powerful, man. I think that's really neat what you're doing up there. What would you say? So you say you're about 33% of different deals, like
yep.
you're a third, and a third usually?
Yeah, and normally that's what it averages out at the end of the year. You might be in one bucket 37%, another one's 28, but if you look at real quick high level, it's almost a third, and it's not intentional other than my cash conversion cycle makes it almost work that way because
Right.
I take out the emotional part of the business because it's so hard. There's deals in the past like I know I can make 75,000. I don't want to sell it for 40,000 today. I know I can make it's a super, but I'm like I broke that rule in the past and it always bit me in the butt. And then of course I'm like, it's different this time. I'm smarter. Well, sure enough, you go down that path, it bites you in the butt, and it's like, all
Yeah.
right, follow the data. The data always tells you if you're this, then do it. Now you look in your business and you might find out at 45 days after that you're less profitable, or you might even be more blessed, like, man, I'm good for 90 days before my numbers start looking bad. Well,
Right.
find out what your data is telling you, and you just have to reverse engineer all the properties that you've done, and eventually it'll start telling a story. You'll look for a pattern and say, "Man, my profitability really does tank here," or "I notice my stress point kind of gets here with the cash flow." I mean, that's hard in this business, right? Cash flow, always trying to keep it in because you put so much money into these properties that it's like, man, I got to still market. I still got to pay overhead. I still got to keep doing it. Now we're doing volume versus where a newbie wouldn't be. I'm not trying to scare the newbie away.
Right.
It's
Right.
baby steps. You got to
Yeah.
start somewhere. But I'm just also say, look at the data. But once you have that data in front of you, and now I follow it kind of religiously, it takes the emotion out of it. The data
Yep.
is what the data is. Data says, nope, you cross the 55 days, you have to sell this off to someone else.
The numbers always tell a story,
It
no matter
does.
what.
It
That's
just
the
does.
hardest thing to learn as an investor is you really got to be conscious of what your numbers are and don't try to. A lot of times we're guilty of we'll see the number
Hmm.
and we'll make an excuse on why
Yep.
that's not really the
Yeah.
number.
It's
That's not
different this
really the
time.
number.
Yeah, it's like, no, no, it can't be. This one's different. The data doesn't understand what I have going on. I
Yeah.
can tell you the data does know what's going on. You're just trying to convince yourself that it's the exception to the rule. And
Yep.
it's like we all get a little bit of that greed gland occasionally, like, yeah, I can make a whole lot more. You know what? If it truly is worth that, I guarantee whoever you sell it off to, you're going to even get a fatter paycheck on the front end if
Yeah.
it's truly what it is. If they're not willing to pay you and you push it around a few people, that number that you were trying to latch onto, I guarantee was never real. You thought
Yep.
it was real, but all the other people say it wasn't. Who's wrong? I hate to
Yep.
say it, check your ego
It's
at the door.
us.
We're wrong. You got
Yep.
to sell it off,
100%.
because you can't have three or four strangers that know no one coming back with similar data. Eventually, they're right, you're wrong. You just got
Yep.
to suck it up and say, well, I saw it different on this one, but it is what it is, and move on.
So Travis, all the success you've had over the past eight
Hmm.
years doing real estate, you said 20, what, 9 years,
Yep.
right? 9 years
Now,
almost.
now we're going in ninth year. Yep.
9 years. Okay. What's your team look like to be able to accomplish all this? When we first started, it was you and your wife, but
Yep.
what's it look like today? And then what did it look like over the years?
Sure. So when I first started, I was solo. The wife still had a job, and I went until I think it was March of 2018. I went to my wife and said, "Hey, I'm getting kind of busy enough that I need to hire someone to help me, kind of in the office, miscellaneous tasks, that type of stuff. Either I go out and hire someone, or you quit and join the team. I don't care which one. I know if she quit and joined the team right away, massive pay cut, all eggs in one basket. But I also know I wasn't going to step on toes, right? Happy wife,
Right.
happy life. So I gave her the option. She's like, nope, I'm going to join you in the business. So she came on board. Um, I would say probably within the first 6 months, you kind of get tired of screening the phone calls and all that. So it's like, hey, let's hire kind of what we call an acquisition person or a lead intake manager, whatever you want to label them as. So they kind of do the filtering. And then once those calls elevate, like, hey, there's some promise there, it got kicked over to me. I go out and do the belly to belly appointment. Did that
Yep.
forever. And then in 2021, we were still doing belly to belly, but we realized it's like, hey, we figured out the market, you know, um, once we got that figured out, we're like, we're going to have a lot more leads when you put it on steroids. So eventually, now we have currently three acquisition managers
Okay.
or lead managers, or whatever you want to call them. Those are the ones that interact with every lead that comes in. And when it looks promising, the way we're set up now, we stopped doing belly to belly on most of the deals. The older people, if they don't want to do with anything over the phone, boom, I'm out there in person talking to them.
Yep.
But if they're willing to do stuff over the phone, then that's what we do. We do all the qualifying on the phone. We make the offer. Now it's going to be subject to an inspection if we've never seen it, right? No one can guarantee their offer. But if it's looking pretty promising, a lot of times we end up doing the belly to belly. But we have three lead managers. It's my wife and myself. We just hired a dispo manager on our team because we're scaling up our advertising even more, and
Nice.
we just got to know that we got to unload more properties as we get them in, and we kind of done the math on those deals when we found out, hey, if the dispo manager is also responsible for bringing in some revenue themselves, um, they inadvertently they kind of pay for themselves because they have to
Right.
bring in for us. We have a low benchmark for ours. Is like, hey, you got to bring in $35,000 a quarter of
Okay.
profit.
Yep.
Now it's not guaranteed profit in that quarter. We just got to see it in the deal, right? Hey, this is the deal. Yep, we'll fix and flip. And if it's 30, it was 30. But they got to bring in that much per quarter. Well, as you can imagine, that revenue is going to far exceed their wage and bonuses and that type of
Right.
thing. So it's kind of like a free position, but it now allows me to delegate. And the one thing I realized when I grew is the more I could delegate, not to the point where it's so big and overheads over the top, but delegate away so my time could get freed up to think of more marketing ideas. That's
Right.
really where this comes down in networking. Hey, any agents? Do you know anyone that wants to sell a property? Hit us up because I'm always looking for revenue generating ideas with my time versus what
Right.
I was doing the day stuff. I was victim of that forever. So I just had to reprogram my mind. My wife actually is on the verge. We're subbing out our bookkeeping and that she's almost done with that. So that means she's going to free up and she's going to focus more with the team, listen to
Cool.
more recorded calls, making sure we're not missing out on deals because that's more revenue generating versus the day to day stuff. So
Right.
it's so we're not the biggest team, and then we have kind of a dedicated that is 8 contractors. They work for themselves, but they pretty much rely most of their business on us type of thing. So
Nice.
we just sub out the work to them on the fix and flips. And even sometimes the hotel, they still have to call the carpet guy or the painter to go
Right.
over to the property. So we kind of got up in scale because of the size that we are. But I don't know. It's been nice delegating, and our paychecks are the biggest they've ever been. So,
That's awesome, man. I think that's really powerful for people to hear is that you started by yourself.
oh, yes,
Right. I
one
think
man.
a lot of these gurus and stuff that you see online or the masterminds or whatever, right away, they're like, oh, you got to have 20 acquisitions people, dispos and
Yep.
VAs and follow-up specialists, all this stuff. We're like you. We operate a
Yeah.
business with my sister, handles all the property management and the books. My son does all the acquisitions and he's actually our agent. He sells all my
Yep.
rehabs. And then he's kind of my right hand with going through the rehab process and a project
Sure.
man, I'm a project manager.
Sure.
That's it. And everybody else is subbed
Yep.
out. One VA, and all she does now is she's a major. I shouldn't say all she does, and the she handles all of our social media and
Yep.
handles all of our anything that can be done off a computer that doesn't need to be in this office. She handles all that. So for anybody
Yep.
listening, understand that professionals that get going in this business usually start as solopreneurs, right?
Hmm.
Lone soldiers
Yeah.
until you first hire somebody to do something that you just don't want to do no more. That's how it usually
Yep.
works. And then and then you take stepping stones. So it's a journey, and I think that's awesome, Travis, that you shared that, and that a lot of people shy away from doing this business because number one, they think they need to have a whole big staff, or
Yep.
number two, they shy away because they get overwhelmed with what they see online or they see at the masterminds or they
Hmm.
see at these networking groups and they just feel inferior to I could never do that. I don't want 20 employees,
Yep.
like your numbers are so much bigger than ours. We like to at the end of the year, we want to average 1.5 to 1.75 rehabs a quarter or a month, right?
Sure.
That's what at the end of
Yep.
the year we want to say we did somewhere around 20 to 24, right?
Sure.
And then in addition to that, it throws in some listings and maybe a couple wholesale deals, maybe a
Yeah.
rental, whatever. But it's all about just monetizing the leads that comes through. So really
Hmm.
quick, Travis, I know we do a lot of the same type of marketing, right? And
Yep.
I want to give a shout out to our marketing vendors because I know one of them actually is probably watching this right now. What is your favorite marketing strategy, and how did you grow to get to the point to make that expenditure to spend that kind of money on that?
Sure. The number one marketing strategy for us is TV.
Yeah,
We do that through Tony 10X and Noah as probably the rep that you would end up talking with.
yeah,
Um, but TV, it sounds intimidating, right? Cost wise. Um, but it's been the biggest game changer in my business. I was doing decent, like I said, with all the other marketing channels, and my other marketing channels is pay per click. We do Facebook, but for me, Facebook it's pretty much just for retargeting. That means if someone's ever gone to your website and viewed anything like that, it kind of follows you through the internet, through Google Ads and all that type of stuff to say, hello, I'm still there if you're thinking about
yeah,
selling your house. Um, and then we're doing some direct mail. I'm not having as much success that would be worth the dollars for me. I know other people are crushing it direct mail, so I believe it's market specific type of thing. But heavily, it's with TV that we do a lot of the inbound methods with the leads. And to get up to that point, when we came across Tony, it was at a mastermind. He was outside, one of the vendors type of thing. Went up and sort of like, what do I got to do to be on TV? And he's like, you're probably around 14,000 to get on just a couple channels. And I'm like, oh man, I was like, it never ends. It's all this huge chunks of money. And I'm just sitting there like, I don't know. I just had this feeling that TV was the solution for me. That was going to be the thing that really turned the corner. Honestly, my wife, and she even admits it. She goes, I wanted nothing to do with TV. She's like, no more. We're spending a lot of money. Let's stay where we're at and doing that. And of course, I was being stubborn. I was like, I'm going to give it a try. So we went down
right,
that path. And we found out actually starting with TV, we were starting at about $10,000 a month. Now we're in Minneapolis, St. Paul market, so it's a bigger marketplace. But that only
right,
got us on a couple channels. But you had to start somewhere, right? So we
right.
started on there, and then business started coming in, and we've stayed that way for the longest time at 10,000 a month. But things were starting to work. And then we realized, hey, the data is the data. We're like, if we had this much more, we should get this many more leads. And if this is what your conversion numbers are, if you're like 1 out of 14, 1 out of 18, whatever it is, just do the math off of it. And you're like, hey, if I want to buy this many houses, I need to spend this much money. And that's what we correlated our budget with. Everything was grown from the business profit rolled back into marketing. That's the
Right.
key on anything on growth is don't spend your money. Take the house money, reinvest it back in the business. It's so tempting. There's things, I mean, there's some cars that I want to have, collector cars, those type of things. I've seen over the years, I'm like, oh, I can so afford that. But I'm like, yeah, but if I take that same money on that $40,000 car and I go ahead and put it back in my business, I'm probably going to make 80 with it. So
Yep.
I'm going to get it to a point, and now we're fortunate to get to a point where I can start taking out chunks of money like that because I was smart enough to keep reinvesting it back into the business. And I still do. It's just now you get surplus from doing that business strategy.
Travis, you don't seem like the guy I'm going to see on Instagram standing next to a Lamborghini with your phone up in the air, taking a picture of yourself. You're not
No,
that guy.
no, I'm the redneck guy out in the woods type of thing. So no, I'm not saying the car wouldn't be nice, but no, I'm not that person at all. I like nice things. We all do, right? Type of things, but no, I,
I'm the same as you, brother. We're about freedom and lifestyle. I mean,
yeah,
there's nothing wrong, right or indifferent. I mean, you can buy and choose and do whatever you want, but I think you and I are right around the same age, and
yep,
our age, I could care less about what somebody thinks about what I have in my wallet. I just want to be able to come and go and live the
yep,
lifestyle I choose. So,
yeah.
I think it's really cool, man. Thank you for taking the time to get on here. Is there anything? Let me think here. There's a couple things. Okay, if you could go back and give a couple nuggets to someone just starting out right now, they're on this podcast, they're sitting in the Porta John on the construction site
Yep.
listening to and they're
Yep.
thinking about wanting to get involved in real estate. What do you tell that person today? Just something
Um,
off the cuff.
yep. You gotta first you gotta want it. If you don't have a burning desire for change, don't do it. It's just a quick hobby. You're gonna invest a bunch of money trying to learn some stuff, and then it's quickly gonna be a fad and push off to the side. You're gonna want the change. If you and your why's gotta almost make you cry. Maybe you're doing it for your kids, maybe you're doing it for your wife, maybe it's someone needs help in your family. If the why is strong enough and you have the desire to change, and you're like, hey, the real estate's probably going to be the vehicle,
Yep.
that's the first starting point. I would say go with that because that'll be your drive. Because there's going to be days that just suck. There's nothing you can do about it. There's not every day is perfect in real estate. So when that day,
Absolutely not.
so when the day sucks, you got to know what you're relying on to get you to the next day when it doesn't suck, type of
Yep.
thing. And your why's got to be there for you and the passion. So if you have that passion, then you just need to set aside some time. And you don't really need a ton of time. In my opinion, you could get away if you could at least carve out 5 hours a week sometime. I would like to say 10 if you can get to them, but if you do five, driving for dollars, you can pin so many houses in an hour. I mean, shit you not, you could probably, I'll even be conservative, 40 to 50 houses in an hour. And I think I'm being very low, like you're really not figuring out the app or anything, even though it's super user friendly. I would say have the time to start putting towards your goal, but reverse the goal backwards. Where do you want to be in 90 days? And if you're like, well, I want my business set up, it's like, okay, well, then let's work backwards. What do you got to do each day to make sure when you get on day one that you did all the proper steps? If you
Right.
just say 90 days from now, I'm going to be able to quit my job and already got the marketing started and I know I already have a deal.
Yeah.
Well, you can't just say it,
Yeah.
that's nice to have the mindset, but let's take it backwards. Let's take 90 days, work it a week at a time, and you might realize you bring it back in bite-sized chunks
Yep.
because it's done on a weekly basis. And before you realize, you're like, oh, I have to do a little bit more than what I thought, but it's also the list isn't so long what I got to do each day,
Right.
to accomplish what I need to get towards my goal.
Yep.
Baby steps do eventually turn into walking adults, right? That's how
Yep.
everyone starts. So I would say have the desire that real estate is going to be your direction. If you're just doing it for the money, that's almost like a job. I don't think that's really what you should do. You should have some passion with it. It doesn't mean you have to be like gung ho over it, like live and drink and think about it 24/7, but you got to have some interest in it. If you're annoyed by
Yeah.
it, there's some other industry that you should be in than real estate. But if it is, jump in, do the baby steps. And then the nugget is I would say, honestly, it would be the Facebook groups, networking with agents and driving for dollars. That's what I would tell anyone because the budget's so low, but I know you have a higher chance of getting a deal.
That's awesome, man. Thank you for sharing that. And guys, Travis, I want to thank you for your time today. I know your time is
Always.
very valuable up there. And guys, my tip for to wrap this is to connect with like-minded individuals, connect with guys like Travis, connect with myself, connect with
Mhm.
other real estate investors that might be just a little bit farther along in their journey than you are, and find a way to learn from them. And until next time, I hope you like this podcast. Like and follow, share, do all the clicks and links and thumbs ups and all that stuff that you need to do to push this out. And don't hesitate to drop comments below, DM me, follow us at Rick Howell REI, follow Travis at MN Nice Home Buyers in Minnesota, and let us know if we can help you out in any other way. Until next time, we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.